Hello and welcome back to the Ntroversial Cinema Podcast. I'm Liz.
And I'm Cosette.
And today we have, genre-wise, a little bit of a shift from what we've normally been covering, but we're going to talk about a very historically controversial film, Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom. How do you feel about this movie?
I don't like it.
Yes. Yes. And
I'm trying not to bring hater energy, but I do not like it, you guys. Which I don't think you're supposed to.
No, you're not supposed to like the movie. If you like the movie for the film itself, for what happens in the film, you need to have a very serious conversation with somebody who's licensed and qualified for that.
Stay away from me. I'm not having it.
Salo is probably one of the most disturbing films that has ever been made. I will probably be so far to say it's not for the faint of heart. This film taught me to not buy DVDs before I have watched them, because whenever we were...
You gotta stop that.
I know. Before we started this podcast and we were thinking about it, go for it.
Though.
It has a beautiful case.
It's got a beautiful case. So if nothing else, the packaging.
Yes. Criterion did a really good job with it. Whenever we were coming up with the first list of films that we wanted to cover, Salo was on there because we had heard so much about it, and I try really hard to get physical copies of things if I'm able to. And so I saw that they had this and I was like, oh, what a perfect opportunity to buy a really infamous film. And then we didn't even watch the DVD when we first watched it. We found it on archive.org. RIP, I hope you come back. Very quickly realized why it is so infamous, why it's been banned, and why it is so controversial. So we're going to have a little bit of a format change to talk about this movie because honestly, it warrants it. We went into it really blind and for the most part.
Yeah, we kind of had a general sense, but I will say what we ended up watching is, it sounds weird, but it's not what I thought I was going to get.
Yeah.
And I'll expand on that later at all.
That's a really good way of putting it, is this film is... I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't what we watched.
I wasn't expecting the story times.
Yeah, those were a real treat, weren't they?
They were a real treat, and they took up a lot of runtime, actually. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm just hearing people trauma dump for a while, I guess. So that was kind of odd. With the format shift, because this film really needs context before you watch it, I'm going to give the summary for the film, and then I'm actually going to talk about the director, because having the context of who he is, why he made the film, and everything surrounding immediately after the film was made is actually quite interesting and important. This film, Salo, was released on November 23rd in 1975. Pier Paolo Pasolini directed it, and the summary from IMDb is, in World War II Italy, 4 fascist libertines round up 9 adolescent boys and girls and subject them to 120 days of physical, mental, and sexual torture. That's exactly what happens in it. Yep. They were not fucking kidding.
About Pasolini, who directed this film, he was an Italian poet, film director, writer, actor, and playwright. He was incredibly politically active, but he kind of followed a rules for thee, but not for me philosophy. And that's because in his later life, he became a Marxist after being conservative growing up. And the rules for thee, but not for me kind of comes into, you have this leftist Marxist ideology, but for his part of Italy where he came from, he was very much a cultural conservatist, and he wanted to, which is fine to want to preserve the language in which you came from, but he wanted to have little individual small governments for his town,
Yeah.
you know, which is kind of contradictory to a Marxist communist
Correct.
ideology. And it doesn't quite make sense.
Hypocrite. I'm sorry.
Also, if you didn't get it already, like there's going to be some politics in this episode, but that's just it
It kind of has to, given the nature of what we're talking about here.
despite what you might think, this is inherently a political film. He was from northern Italy, which was poorer than southern Italy. And in a lot of his other films and plays that he would write, anytime there was a southern Italian character, he would always make sure that their dialects were really, really enhanced. As his life went on and as the world changed, he really, really hated how Americanized the world was becoming with rampant consumer capitalism. Pasolini is also openly gay and had a few questionable relationships with younger men and was no stranger to being arrested.
Younger men?
Yeah, whenever I went through the entire emotional roller coaster of reading his Wikipedia page, because at some points I'm like,
You're like, yeah, good for you.
for the people, and then you're like, no.
Like, don't do that. Good for you, King, being openly gay, especially back then, but like, ooh, that's not okay.
And I understand that around this time, there was a very specific movement within the Communist Party where they really believed in giving children more personal autonomy and kind of treating them like little adults. But then they steered too far and they were like, we should start having relations with children. It's like, no,
we should not.
Don't do that.
And like, obviously we know that now in like modern times, but I'm sorry, y'all. It's still weird. And I'm still going to be like,
Yeah, I can respect the work, but
we can free love that shit all day long, but I ain't here for it.
No. Given the time period that Pasolini was alive, he did serve briefly, I think, in World War II in the Italian army before they were captured. Before they were captured by the Germans.
My American ass, like, boo!
Whenever I read that, and then I was thinking about Salo as a whole, I was like, that makes me even more uncomfortable because you were in the army at this point.
I know, true. Also,
like,
good
how
point.
How much of this is from personal experience, and what kind of personal experiences did you have here?
For context, y'all, my boyfriend is Italian, and so from now on, whenever we get into an argument, I'm going to be like, okay, Mussolini. You can't talk to me. You're Italian, Mussolini.
For as fucked up and horrible as watching this movie, watching interviews of him talking, he seems so nice.
Yeah.
And that's usually what people say about really fucked up people, but he seems so nice. A little misogynistic. Yeah.
Yeah, like Liz has a little book came with this, and so I was reading it briefly before recording, and like putting them on paper, it's like that very uppity, pretentious art student that like you can't stand, and then when they open their mouth to talk, you're like, oh, you're pleasant?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like, he was so good at crafting a story and honestly being a director and which elements to pull in to be the most effective with it. Kind of that passive misogyny. Because for the longest time, he didn't want to have a female assistant. And then eventually there was this one lady who really, really, really wanted to work with him, and she was very persistent. And for this film, I don't know how long before, but she eventually was able to become his assistant.
Yeah.
She got what she wanted and then got to work with him on his very last film. Because, spoiler alert, he was assassinated 3 weeks prior to this film being released.
Yep.
And politics is important because it is kind of alleged that he was assassinated by a far-right group who did not agree with him or his politics. So why did Pasolini make Salo? Prior to this film, he was known for his Trilogy of Life series, but like we've talked about before, watching the world change around him really jaded him, and he had always used sex as a theme in his films, but as the world was changing, he kept seeing how humans were kind of being used or made to be surrogate products. It wasn't, a product or thing that people were consuming. It was actual like labor and the work of other people and just the actual physical bodies, which again, American capitalism, consumerist capitalism. He's quoted as saying, "I think that consumerism manipulates and violates bodies, neither more nor less than Nazism," which is a pretty strong statement. He hated fascism, and Salo is really the perfect picture of what fascism is. And I think it is inherently a really strong anti-fascist film, because this film was supposed to be the first in his trilogy of death series, which he was planning out to mirror the trilogy of life series. And in case you were curious of who the film was made for, according to Pasolini, it's for everyone, for people like me, which is a very interesting statement because Pasolini isn't quite like everyone.
Right. Well, and I can't tell if that's a very arrogant statement. Like, people like me will get it. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think so, but it's also just like, buddy, not everyone is like you. I hate to tell you.
No, and I think what he really meant by that is because he was a Marxist throughout his entire life, is very class conscious. I think what he meant by that is this film is for everyone, people like me, people not in the bourgeoisie, people who are working class. Most people are not class conscious, especially nowadays. So we need
to be, y'all.
I'm hoping that we will have this episode released right before Election Day in case you need any more potential thoughts. Fascism is bad. Any inch closer to fascism.
No bueno.
Nope. And if you need a reminder, this is a film about 4 fascists.
Yes. Yes.
So with that being said, I think if any of this sounds interesting to you and you want to watch the movie, please feel free to. I think this is the most graphic film that I have ever watched. And that is saying a lot because I've seen a lot of things, okay? If you have the stomach for it,
sorry, I just got flashbacks.
if you have the stomach for it, watch at your own discretion, okay? And then tap back into here and hear our thoughts about it.
And let me say before we get too much into the plot too, just knowing the background of like who this guy is probably would have prepared me a lot more than I thought it would to watch this film, because I went in thinking this movie was one thing and it certainly was not. I knew it was fucked up. I'd heard it was fucked up. I heard it was one of the most disturbing films ever made, but like the reason why behind it would have helped greatly. So I will say, if you've had a wondering to watch this movie and you think you might be able to handle the content, because it is disturbing, it's great, it bothers me, I think you're still going to do better than what Liz and I went into it with, just knowing that context. So with that said, now we're going to get into the structure of the film. And it is broken into sections, which that is also a reflection of another one of Dante's poems. So if you heard our Terrifier, Dante popped up there too, so I thought that was kind of funny. So you have the setup of the movie, which is the Circle of Manias is the first. And it kind of, so you get the introductory part of the movie where you're introduced to what we're going to call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, aka the major assholes who thought of all the horrible shit to go down. So you have the magistrate, which is the dude with like a little mustache kind of thing. And then a duke who has, oh, you never know their real names, by the way. This is how they refer to themselves throughout the whole movie. Okay. So he is a full bearded dude, and then a bishop who I really don't know how else to describe him other than he's a weird looking motherfucker who likes to have love affairs with boys. And president who is a scrawny, also weird-looking dude who likes butt stuff. There's really... I don't know how else to describe these people to you. They're in a meeting, and they're basically like, we're going to marry each other's daughters because we're not only bound by what happened in the war, but we are now bound by family ties. I don't remember who marries what daughter. Doesn't matter. They just marry each other's daughters. Then they set up their abductions of the young teens who are then going to be used as their little playthings throughout the 120 days.
This film is taking place towards the end of World War II, where they've already accepted that they're going to lose the war, and life as kind of they know it is about to end really soon. So they just decide to go all the fuck out, balls to the walls. Let's have a last hurrah before it's over.
Yep. So they're gonna commit the greatest atrocities that they can think of against young people. And so they bring them to this villa where they tell them why they're abducted, and it's because they're going to be put through like physical, mental, and sexual torture, and they're there to be their playthings, and they set up certain rules for them, like the daughters have to be naked at all times. They have to have no like intercourse that's not sanctioned by them.
They also can't reference anything from religion because if they do, they're going to either be severely punished or killed outright. And so they're just like no praying, no mentions of God or holy scriptures, nothing like that.
So they're basically, in a way, like, I guess, denouncing God here. It's like, nope, God has no place here. We are your gods, basically. Deal with it. Now, in each section, there is a lady who will detail stories about her life, and each of the ladies basically just trauma dump on everybody else. And, like the first lady in the Circle of Manias basically tells a story about how she basically was pimped out as a child. Mm-hmm. And obviously grown men had to have sex with her.
Yeah, and whenever they're going over the rules of what the abductees are going to experience, they frame these women as storytellers before they are going to engage in like group orgies.
Yeah, it's supposed to stimulate their horniness or whatever by sharing these stories. And one lady shows the girls how to manually stimulate a male organ. I will say there is one girl who ends up getting like killed, and she won. She won the whole movie because she got killed right at the very beginning. And I was like, yes, girly, let's go. Two of the victims, because that's what they're called, the male and the female victims, are just referred to as victims. And they make them get married. The four men do this thing where they're like, all right, now go have sex or whatever. But then when they start getting into it, they're like, no, the flower is mine. For those not watching, I just facepalm because it made no fucking sense because they told them to start doing it and then they stopped them from doing it. Two of the four men got in on the action. I'll just put it that way.
An irreverent way to refer to this film is the film completely comprised of butt stuff. Because throughout the entire film, it's all butt stuff.
I mean, that's fine. I guess more butt representation.
My anaconda don't.
My anaconda don't.
And throughout the film, too, they, in the evenings, will gather for meal times. And there are, obviously, throughout all of the film, there's a bunch of rape in it. But during the very first dinner scene, that's when one of the very first rape scenes between one of the women happens. The atmosphere at those dinners and throughout the entire film is just this bizarre mix of people watching some of the most horrific things happening to others, and they're laughing it up.
They're just eating like their dinner, and I'm like, I would lose my appetite, homie.
The marriage section is kind of the ending of the first circle, and then we go into, I hate to tell you, but it really only gets worse because we're entering the circle of shit now.
Literally. And this is the part of the movie where, I'm not gonna lie, Cosette checked out a little bit, and I was just sitting there like, when will this be over? You know, I'm just going to sit here and just wait. Just wait.
We've had this one lady telling us her stories about her childhood sex work indoctrination. But this next lady, similar story. The very same thing of like getting into sex work as a child, lots of pedophilia, gross shit. It's worse because she's into the really, really extreme body kinks.
Yep.
Where if you're not cool with coprophilia, you're going to have a real bad time because she opens up the floor for that, for the piss kink. She's very graphic, and she, for some reason, like everyone else controlling this little fucked up situation, is really into it.
I can't. I definitely learned my line of shit in this movie, and I've heard of other movies where it involves like some poop and like stuff like that, and I just want you to, I probably will not be watching those, so sorry, because there's a scene where the Duke makes a girl eat his feces. And of course, y'all, I know a real human being is not
it's
eating
the cover. It is the cover.
This is the cover.
This is why people look at this cover, and if they've watched the film, they get real uncomfortable.
Yeah. He made her eat his fresh shit, too. Like, he had just shit it out on the floor.
Everything spirals down from here, obviously, because they're not allowed to relieve themselves in the night. They have to keep their shit because... There's no good way of saying this, but at dinner one night, they're feasting on shit. Table, just plate after plate of human shit. Y'all, these libertines are out of their mind because they're treating this so totally normally. They're not even registering the fact that nasty. They're just treating it like this delicacy that tastes so good to them.
Yeah, the president, who's the weirdest one out of the bunch, in my humble opinion, that man is fucking weird. He, like, gets this one, I think he's one of the guards or one of the studs, one of them, to smile while, like, his teeth have, like, poop on it and stuff. And I can't, y'all. Like, this, there's a reason why Liz is the one talking about this one, because I... physically cannot do it.
Yes. One of the libertines gets a fabulous idea throughout dinner that they're going to have a competition to see which one of the victims has the best ass in the group. And so they take them all into this room and they have them kind of kneel down, face down, ass up. They're like, oh, we need to turn out the lights. So we have to make sure that we can't tell like who's a girl and who's a boy, because throughout all of this movie, like obviously misogyny, but blatant misogyny of like, we know that we have the preference for the boys. We should give the girls a chance to, you know, compete fairly, which isn't a thing. The one who ends up winning is named Franco. And they're like, the winner will receive instant death.
Which fucking pick me.
Yeah. So that was a fucking lie. They were like, you are not going to be so lucky that we're going to instantly kill you. So that concludes the circle of shit sequence.
So then they go into in the circle of blood. That's the next part of the movie, and the final part of the movie. They have like this big, like almost like a Black Mass wedding scene where they're like kind of all getting married to each other.
Yeah, it was giving the worst drag that I've seen.
Yeah, like it was not good. So they hold like this basically mass wedding ritual, and then it goes into a scene with the magistrate and one of the studs doing it very vigorously, and I'm like, all right, then. So after they're done, the magistrate's like, all right, I'm gonna go check on everybody, make sure everyone's acting right, because remember, they're supposed to be following certain rules. They examine the captain room, and one of the men, Claudio, I can't remember what he was caught doing, and it doesn't say on the Wikipedia, but he was caught doing something bad, and so then he's like, oh, well, but Graziella, one of the girls, she's hiding a photograph. So the magistrate's like, oh, okay, well, I'll leave you alone then. So then he goes to Graziella to reveal the photograph. And then Graziella is like, oh, but Ava and Antoniska are having a secret sexual affair because no lesbianism, guys. Women cannot get off here.
Nope. We are okay with gay shit. Lesbians, though?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say eat shit.
Yeah, sorry.
Kick rocks.
Kick rocks. Go away. So then they're like, oh, but like, don't do anything to us because one of the victims, Umberto, was having an affair with one of the staff. And he also reveals himself to be a communist by doing like the little hand thing. Yes.
And the thing with Umberto and why they would have been pissed regardless for him having an affair, but it was the fact that the staff was a black girl that they especially took really bad offense to it.
Yep. They end up, the like remaining victims, they need to determine who's going to be punished. So like some of them are spared, and then the other ones who are determined to be given a painful death are given like a little blue ribbon. And for the other ones, they're like, well, the group of the 4 men are like, well, if you keep collaborating with us, maybe you can go home. Like, we might let you go at the end of this because the 120 days is coming to an end. I would also like to note that at this point, the pianist, because there's a pianist there who was like playing music for everybody. She has no speaking lines, but it gives this shot of her looking out the window, and like you can just see like the pain in her eyes, like she did not want to be there, and then she ends up jumping to her death out the window, which good for her. They've determined who will get a painful death, and then the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse effectively take them out to be tortured in various ways, such as being branded, having their dunks cut, having their eyeballs taken out, like pretty much anything that you can imagine happening basically happens. And as all of this like chaos and everything like that and this torture is going on, it cuts to a shot of these 2 guys dancing together to well, I guess there's no music anymore because pianist is dead. But yeah, whatever's in their head. And the one guy asks the other, like, what's your girlfriend's name again? And he tells him the name, and that's basically
the movie ends.
That's
right
it.
After that. Like the last line of the movie is Margherita, which is the girl's
Margarita.
Yeah. Her name is the name of the pizza sauce.
Margarita.
I probably mispronounced it.
It's okay. It's Italian.
Like that is probably what was so confusing too about the film. Whenever you're going into it without any context at all, is like, why the fuck? Why was that the very last line of the movie? Like, what is going on here? As the torture is happening at the very end to the victims, it cuts to a lot of the libertines just watching it through kind of like a pseudo ivory tower. They have binoculars so they can look at whatever details that they want to. And eventually, I can't remember which libertine it is, but then he switches the binoculars so that it's small, but he's like looking in on himself at that point. So this film is obviously ripe with so much symbolism that unless you know what's going on and were kind of alive at that time, completely like lost to you at that point. So that is Salo, 120 Days of Sodom.
Yeah, it's awful. Like I said, knowing the context of like why this film was made and like the director's personal kind of background, it does help. Too much poop for me, sorry. Not a good movie. It kind of hurt me too, because like I rated a Serbian film on Letterboxd like 1 star, which I know you can give 0 stars or like
a half or something.
But I was like, fuck it, 1 star, whatever. And I expected to rate Salo at least like a 3, which of course there's tons of people out there who rate this movie 5 out of 5 stars. They love it, blah, blah, blah. Definitely kind of good, I guess, for the intersection of being like history buff and also liking really disturbing movies. So if that's your thing, this is the movie for you, I have to tell you. But I only rated this movie 2 stars because even and I probably still retain that rating knowing what I know now, because I'm like, bro, I'm never going to rewatch this fucking movie. I have no desire to. And I know, like, obviously the circle of shit was there for a reason, because it's like one of the most degrading ways you can like put a person through torture and to just bring them down to like almost like this animalistic level. I'm still just like, no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Yeah. And I can definitely understand that too. And
But respect to the sets. The sets were
oh God,
beautiful.
yes. And there in the Criterion Collection DVD, there are multiple documentaries of how Salo was made, interviews with Pier Pasolini, just to kind of understand his artistic intent whenever he was making the film. They also did have like a person that took a lot of care for the set design, because the building that they were filming in actually did not have, I think, any AC or heat. And so it was very cold in there, and they had to take a lot of inspiration from Art Deco interior design, and going back to kind of them eating shit. Yeah. Yeah. Not only is it extremely degrading for a person to do that, but it's also symbolism for the goods of products, and eating. And as like, now we have planned obsolescence, but as the quality of goods in our world continuously deteriorate for the sake of creating more capital and more money, that was also a commentary on the quality of food that Americans eat.
Yes.
But the production aspect of the film, in case anybody was curious, they were not eating actual shit. It certainly looked like it. My God.
Realistic.
It was brownie mix and fruit. I have a lot of ethical reasons for why I have issue with this film. One of them being that the age ranges of the people who played the victims, the youngest person was either 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And I know that back in the day, there were different laws that did not exist at all. Actors were also not aware of the scenes that they were going to be filming any given day. They didn't know what they were getting themselves into until they were right into it. And that was a product by design on Pasolini's part, but goddamn, there were a lot of
prepare people for this though.
Nah, he wanted it realistic.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Hey, you got the shot, man. Like the girl throwing up, you got the shot, but like
at what cost?
13, 14-year-old needs to be exposed to that.
Thankfully, in the torture scenes, they used like prosthetic penises, because in one of the shots, they are holding a lighter over someone's penis.
Yes. Oh my God.
And when he was directing it, he was like, okay, so pretend like you're going to burn the tongue, like pretend that you're going to do this. And then whenever it gets close, like I will call cut, or this other actor then is going to enter the frame, So he was very courteous.
Your director though, like
yes. And this may or may not be surprising to people or depending on if they have any film production experience, but a common theme from the cast of Salo was they pointed out how jovial everyone was on set, which makes sense once you've kind of been desensitized to the fact that, yeah, you're going to have to film some pretty fucked up shit. People are naked. It's cold. Like, you're acting out horrible things. But people really were... It feels wrong to use the word familial in the context of what is going on in the film. I don't know if it makes me feel better or worse that they were in a good mood. Anybody watching or listening, we're having some technical difficulties, but anywho, so the libertines in this film are symbolism themselves based on their names, because we have the magistrate, the duke, the bishop, and the president, and they're supposed to represent the different forms of government that essentially collaborate with each other and fuck over their constituents. Our brains are so fried.
Magistrate, it's like a court system, and then obviously the bishop is a bishop, Catholic Church and all that kind of thing.
Yes, the church was one of them. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So the bishop, and then the duke, I believe that's kind of like a royal family or like high esteemed person. Then obviously the president, which is the president, and we all know what a president is because at least here in America we have one.
I fully understand why this film is so highly regarded, because even though it's an awful, awful film and an awful watch, that's the point of the film. Like, it's not supposed to be received the way that a traditional film is, because usually for most films, you either have a hero or an anti-hero, you know, but either way, you're typically rooting for the protagonist. And this film is so different in that regards, because you kind of are also watching it through an outside perspective. Shouldn't be rooting for anybody except for the victims to escape, but
you know that they're not going to. Like, you kind of already have that set up.
Exactly. The irreverence and normality in which the libertines, the studs, are, and the storytellers are all regarding the actions that they're taking is a really, really visceral look at how fascism regards itself. You know, these atrocities and horrible things that they're doing is a normal day-to-day to them. They are just out there in their worldview as living their best life.
That's why those two boys at the end, when they're having that conversation while dancing, it's like just that final gut punch reminder that these people get to go home and just like live lives, basically. Life will carry on as normal despite the things that they just put people through. So I'm not going to call it like the beauty of the Salo ending, but definitely the heavy symbolism of that people will, government, church, whatever, what have you, will fuck you over at the end of the day, and then you get to watch as they just go home and live their everyday lives while you sit there and toil in the mud and work your lives away.
Yeah. Because people are like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be under, you know, a thumb. But that's where a lot of the commentary on class consciousness comes into hand, too, whenever the victims are selling each other out for their own, you know, trying to save their own skin in the process. Yeah, they're going to do that because they're desperate people. But that is a commentary on why revolutions haven't really worked all that well, because people will sell each other out, and the working class, more often than not, to save their own selves as individuals, are going to undermine the works of the entire group.
Yep.
The way that Pasolini was able to craft this film from beginning and end, because they had a lot of unused footage for this movie. Kind of concerning to think about.
Yeah.
They had so much unused footage, and he was very meticulous in that editing room, which clearly pays off because the intention was to create a film so revolting and impactful and really unkind. And it was so successful from beginning to end. It met and exceeded its mission statement in that moment. And I think where I start to get my ratings in, I look at it in two ways of, if I'm rating my experience watching the movie.
Nope.
That would be, yeah, I'll go with you on that one. Like a 1.5, 2 stars out of 5, because fuck a Serbian film. There's, like, if that's the bar, okay. In comparison to a Serbian film, how are we doing? But if I'm rating the film out of artistic intention and execution, that bitch is a 5 out of 5, because, like, it's effective. It wastes no time. There is literally no scene in the film that doesn't have a justification as to why it should be there.
Right.
It's so unfortunate that he was such a weird little dude, and I disagree with all of the shit that he was up to.
Right.
But god damn, like, imagine if the skill that he had could have been applied to different genres, and, like, they were not weird people. God, we would have had such fantastic movies.
Yeah, we would have had a great time.
So,
like, I respect where this movie came from. Like, I respect what the intention was. It's just not an enjoyable watch, which is the point. I get it. It's the point, but it's not like anything I'm going to be like, yes, I am just going to watch Salo today because I am in the mood to hate on government and fascism. Bitch, I do that every day of my life. Okay? If you're not American, then you know what we got going on over here. So, too much poop, sorry.
Yes. Very succinctly put. Yeah, for sure. That's all that I think I have in me to say.
Yeah, I think that's all we got. If you've heard this all and now you're more prepared to go into the movie, that's fair. If you also never want to watch this movie because now you know the content, also fair. But either way, please let us know what you thought. If you have already seen it, let us know what you thought. If you heard this and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go check this out, or nope, I will never touch this movie with a 10-foot pole, let me know. And as always, please give us a follow on all the socials. We have Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all those lovely things.
Yes, we're not always talking about human shit, you know?
No, I don't know. This will not happen very often, I will say. And also remember to always please subscribe and rate the podcast. It greatly helps us on platforms. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed listening, and we hope to see you in the next episode of the Controversial Cinema Podcast, and we hope you have a good night.
Bye-bye.
You'll find superstition a contagious thing. Some people let it get the better of them. I don't think you will.
No.